Welcome to Washington in Focus Daily. It is Thursday, August 27th, 2026. I'm Carlene Johnson, the Center Square, Washington's state government reporter. And in today's episode, Seattle teachers have taken a strike authorization vote. That doesn't mean they're going to definitely be on strike, but there's the real possibility. There's only a few days left to come to a resolution. The school year is supposed to start next week on the 2nd for about 60,000 or 50,000 students in the state, or rather in the city of Seattle. So we're going to get into that a little bit. What are the teachers holding out for? Some of it are the typical demands, including more money. Then, latest on the court battles over the public investment impact disclosure statement to accompany the initiative that seeks to repeal the income tax. We mentioned yesterday that Arthur West, the citizen activist who sued to block or amend the PIID in Thurston County Court, an effort that was rejected, now on appeal at the state Supreme Court. Well, he's now suing the state GOP and GOP chairman, Jim Walsh, even though the two were on the same side in the fight about the PIID. You're going to hear from both Arthur West and Jim Walsh in today's episode. And then a new report from the Reason Foundation on fiscal health for governments at the state level, down to county level, city level, and even school districts. And they looked at a number of different metrics, about 20,000 different government entities all across the country. And there are a handful here in the state of Washington that earned what they call red flags, basically warning signs about fiscal health or lack thereof. So we're going to talk to the lead author in the report coming up in today's episode. All right, Seattle teachers on Wednesday evening took a vote. 91% of them agreed that they will authorize a strike if they don't reach an agreement with the school district by September 1. Then the strike would start the very next day, September 2nd, which, as I mentioned, is supposed to be the first day of school for about 50,000 students in the Seattle school district, the largest district in the state of Washington. Now, the union wants smaller class sizes. They want more special education staff and raises above inflation. They automatically get a raise, based on inflation every year. They want more than that. This followed 24 bargaining sessions, according to the union, going back to June when school got out and they started bargaining for this new contract, because last year they were operating on just a single 1 year contract. So both sides were well aware that this was coming up again. And for weeks now, we've been hearing kind of growing talk about a potential strike. Seattle teachers last walked out 4 years ago in 2022, which in turn delayed the start of the school year for, I think it was 5 days, and the kids had to make that up. The teacher's current contract, again, as I mentioned, ends on August 31, and both sides say they're continuing to negotiate around the clock. So that's good news. But here's what they're demanding for a pay hike. And I'll read this off my page here just so I don't get it wrong. They want salary increases of 1.5% for this school year, 2% next year, and 2.5% for the 2028-2029 year. Those are on top of the automatic annual inflation-based cost of living raises that they get. And I want to put up a screenshot here from the fiscal.wa.gov website that shows pay, and this is at the lower end for Seattle educators. You see that column on the far right was pay for the 2024-25 school year. That is the most recent year that we have data for. So they did get another raise last year, but this was the pay scale for 24-25's school year. And then you can see, if you look over a few columns to the left of there, you can see just 4 years prior in the 2020 and 21 school year. Oh, COVID years, weren't those fun? What they were making compared to 4 years later. Many of them got close to a $30,000 raise over that time, maybe more than most of us got. So there's the argument, of course, teachers, should be well compensated for the critical work that they do. No argument here, but what is fair compensation? Remember, it's only about a 10-month work year for them. Many of them also end up working, summer jobs, or they get to enjoy the time off. So I spoke this morning to Vicki Murray. She is the Education Center Director at Washington Policy Center. And I chatted with her. She had heard about the potential strike and saw, like we all did, that last night that strike authorization vote was taken by the union. Again, not a huge surprise. But I asked her specifically about the fact Seattle teachers are holding out for more money.
Listen, when we're investing in education, we want to invest in great teachers. So that makes sense on its face. Nobody disagrees with that. Here's the problem, though. When first and foremost, Seattle public school teachers are among the highest paid in the country. They make well into the six figures. And then what we're also talking about with this potential strike is that not only will there be a teacher pay increase, there's also going to be a non-teaching staff or administrative staff pay increase that's even higher. And if you do go onto the state fiscal information page, which is really helpful, you can see how much funding has changed over time. And if you look at most administrators, they're making near or north of $250,000. So even by Seattle's more expensive standard of living, cost of living, that's still a very high salary. And here's something else to keep in mind. Just over the past 5 years, per pupil funding has increased by nearly $10,000 per pupil. Now, that's not inflation adjusted, but that's a serious amount of money. And so I think as we always have to look at both sides of the ledger. Washingtonians have historically been extremely generous, willing to invest in education, invest in their, children's teachers. However, the other side, and we can get into this, is what are the outcomes for all of that investment?
Now, this potential strike and the demand for more money comes at a time when the Seattle School District is facing a really critical budget shortfall, anywhere from 87 to $100 million. And the union has indicated that they were actually going to demand even more money, but because of the budget situation that the district is facing, they're only asking for these raises of, between 1 and 2.5% over the, or 1.5 to 2.5% over the next 3 years. One of the other demands is smaller class sizes, but according to the Seattle Times, the Seattle Public School District enrollment has dropped by 3,000 students over the last 6 years. So they already have fewer students in those classrooms. And Murray at WPC reminded me that one of the solutions for Seattle and some of the other struggling districts is just waiting for the state to opt in. We're talking about what Congress did last year in enacting the federal tax credit for individual contributions to nonprofits, organizations that distribute K through 12 education scholarships. That kicks in first of this year, 2027. We're all going to be able to take advantage of that $1,700 dollar for dollar federal income tax credit. Whether our state opts in or not, we get to do it. The question is, if our state doesn't opt us in, if Governor Bob Ferguson does not opt us in, then our money, our tax credit 1-for-1, can go to any other state that we choose. A state like maybe Mississippi that has really turned things around for student outcomes in recent years. And, we can decide to send that money where we want, but it won't stay here in the state of Washington unless we opt in. Problem is, Washington Education Association and the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction, Superintendent Chris Rakedale, are opposed. They're worried that people are going to say they want to make sure all that money goes to private schools. But as Murray points out, there is absolutely zero evidence in states that have already been doing this, like her former state of Arizona, where she came from, that money would end up being, directed away from public schools.
This is for any K-12 education expense for any student, public or private. Now, the Washington Education Association has come out against it because among the many education expenses people could use for their children include private school tuition and private school expenses. I think what the fear is that if parents are given control or given scholarships, that they might leave public schools. I'm here to tell you, as someone from the first state in the country to have a tax credit scholarship program, started over 30 years ago. Um, we don't see this mass exodus from public schools. The vast majority of school children continue to attend public schools. In fact, heck, there was just an op-ed in the Washington Post, another op-ed that said this program could be a windfall for public schools. So when you're and one of the core education expenses it covers is special education. So think of therapies, services, extra tutoring, transportation. That would all be covered. And the amount of money that conservatively, just 30% of federal taxpayers living in Washington took advantage of this program, that could generate conservatively over $700 million each year. So we could take care of so many of these problems if we stop fixating on power and control and what everybody else is doing. Let's not cut our noses off to spite our faces.
So we will know in the next few days whether or not Seattle teachers are going to hit the picket line. And I want to point you to our Center Square Washington page. My colleague Randy Diamond has a lot more to share about this. He's putting up an article on that page today, so I encourage you to check that out. All right, now to this. Arthur West, a pretty prolific filer, I should say, of legal complaints, usually about government transparency, wanting things to be out in the open and fair. He's now suing the state GOP and GOP chairman, Representative Jim Walsh of Aberdeen, even though they're on the same side in the fight over the public investment impact disclosure statement that will accompany I 645. That's Let's Go Washington's income tax repeal attempt, going to be on the November 3 ballot. Now, typically, West, in legal battles in the past, he represents himself, and he did again in this case. Earlier this month in Thurston County, he lost his challenge, and that meant Let's Go Washington, then the organization behind 645, they were also hoping to challenge the PIID in the same court before the same judge on the same day. But when West lost his case, Judge Chris Lanise basically said, it's the same thing, the same challenge. I'm not even going to, waste time. And Let's Go Washington never even got a chance to put up their attorneys and their case to make an argument. And GOP Chair Walsh was not pleased about that. He suggested right away on social media that Arthur West kind of messed things up, went in there ill prepared. He's not an attorney. He said things like Judge Lanise tricked Arthur West and, kind of tripped him up and basically messed things up for Let's Go Washington, precluding them from getting a chance to make their case to the judge. So Arthur West didn't like that. Don't go out there and say things bad about me on social media. I didn't mess up my case whatsoever, is his contention. And so he asked Walsh to publicly apologize and, in fact, insisted on it. We'll put this graphic up. I'll read this to you in part. This is from Arthur West to Jim Walsh. She says, "This is false, extremely defamatory, and commercially disparaging in that I was not tricked into making procedural errors. Rather, the court just decided to screw the other litigants. They had every opportunity to be there or consolidate, and they themselves made any procedural errors that day." Goes on to say, "The false accusation that I was tricked is defamatory, as I was fully aware of what I was doing and even requested the judge delay his ruling until that afternoon." He goes on to say he feels he's been damaged irreparably by some of the things that Chairman Walsh has said. No apology came after he made that demand, and West told the Center Square he was not happy to be insulted. But at that point, when I spoke to him late, or actually it was, yeah, late last weekend, at that point, he sounded like he was just, mad about it, but gonna let it roll off of his back. Here's part of that conversation.
I don't really care about being criticized from both sides of this. The Republicans say that, oh, he got tricked by the court and denied us our right to get a hearing. No, they made a procedural error, and uh, all I did was prosecute my case, and I didn't make any procedural errors, and I certainly wasn't tricked anything by Judge Lanise. So, to all the critics, good luck. Why don't you try doing something, and then I can criticize you.
But then Tuesday of this week, West got more serious about it, turned his attention directly to Jim Walsh of the state GOP, and filed a lawsuit basically claiming defamation of his character in those social media posts, suggesting he got tricked by the judge. Now, Chairman Walsh says that West's lawsuit against him is a waste of time and a distraction at this point. He doesn't think it'll go anywhere, and he says the focus should be on Judge Lanise. Now, Walsh had put out, it's not online anymore, but a call to action after the August 7th argument, um, where Judge Lanise was a little bit animated. Some said maybe theatrical. Certainly didn't have the typical sort of judge, um, professional demeanor. He kind of got pretty heated in that exchange with Arthur West. And Jim Walsh suggested people file complaints with the Judicial Ethics Board or the commission. I don't know if it's a board or a commission, but telling people to file complaints about Judge Lanise's behavior that day. So here's Jim Walsh talking about that with me 6 days ago.
Uh, and this judge, and I'm sure your viewers have seen the video, heard the first of the two challenges and acted just bizarrely. Acted as an advocate, not as an impartial judge, was asking leading questions of the parties in the challenge.
Now, in text messages this morning, Jim Walsh again said the focus really needs to be on the judge. He texted this. He said, Arthur's trying to portray himself as the lead character when he really played just a minor role. The story is about Judge Lanise's bad actions. Now, West, in his lawsuit, I should say, is seeking punitive damages. And as the complaint notes, he wants an unambiguous retraction and correction of the defamatory statements from Walsh and the state party. This lawsuit is West v. Walsh. And as I mentioned yesterday, ironic, perhaps not, I don't know, coincidence, not sure, but this case will go before Judge Lanise next week in Thurston County Superior Court. And to that, Walsh texted me today and said, life's irony and an opportunity for WAD GOP to make our points. So he didn't seem too bothered by the fact they'll go before Judge Lanise, even though he's, been making pretty openly critical comments of the judge over the last few weeks. Okay, final segment in today's episode of Washington in Focus Daily has to do with a report that came out last week from Reason Foundation. They looked at fiscal risk of state, county, city, school district governments all across the country. This was based on audited financial reports that are, publicly available, but it was about 20,000 different government entities they looked at. And they flagged Washington in three different areas. The cities of Seattle and Spokane were flagged for having two red flags each. The state of Washington triggered as well two financial red flags, and the Seattle School District triggered a single red flag. Now, a single red flag doesn't necessarily mean there's an immediate fiscal crisis, but as we just talked about, the Seattle School District already is in some serious budget trouble. And then, of course, a combination of more than one, two or more red flags, is perhaps evidence that that government is in a bit of precarious financial position in both the short and the long term. So I interviewed Jeffrey Lawrence at Reason Foundation. He's their research director, and he authored this report. And he told me that Washington State's single red flag centers on what they call debt per capita. So that's what the state's assets are versus the debt. and how that ultimately ends up landing on our shoulders.
One is liabilities for per capita. So we recommend that states, counties, cities should not have more than $10,000 in outstanding debt per capita. Washington is a little bit above that at 12,000. And then the other one is unrestricted net position. So Washington State has a negative unrestricted net position balance. And what that means is, let's say that you could liquidate all of your assets and use them to pay off your debt. Well, Washington has 133 million in assets and 133 billion in assets, 93 billion in liabilities. So they have more assets than liabilities. However, a lot of those assets are restricted for particular uses. So if the state gets a grant from federal government to cover Medicaid payments, for instance, it's not allowed to be used for anything else. So restrictions like that mean that a lot of cash the state is sitting on isn't available to be used to pay whatever bill the state might have. And so once you account for those restrictions, the state's actually in a negative position.
So a negative position there, you heard him say, and if you've watched this podcast, if this isn't your first time watching, you may be aware or not surprised, I should say. But remember, we're not really doing ourselves any favors when it comes to sort of financial risk, when it comes to improving that health, when we do things like raid the rainy day fund, which we did this last budget cycle, and raid pension funds, which we did this last budget cycle to feed the general budget and other priorities of the majority. And Washington State right now faces a projected budget shortfall going into this next, budget cycle. The legislative session will be a 2-year budget cycle, 2027 to 2029. Going into that, I expect a heated fight. So anywhere from 4 billion up to 6.7 billion. I've heard figures much higher than that. That's based on, reports that come out from the Office of Financial Management. Every few months, we get an update there. Okay, so then the cities of Seattle and Spokane each triggered 2 red flags in this Reason Foundation report. So that's a little bit more serious. More on that with Jeffrey Lawrence from Reason.
So they both have negative unrestricted net position, similar to the state. In Seattle, that's $161 million. Which in terms of the total asset base, they have about $19 billion in assets. So it's negative, but it's small enough that it could be corrected within a couple of years if they don't overspend. Looks like their liquidity, all the short-term liquidity stuff looks fine, except Spokane has a really small amount of cash on hand at the end of fiscal year, $29 million, which is less than 1% of total assets. That usually means, well, they got to find a way to get cash.
And how do cities or any government entity for that matter typically approach the got to get some more cash situation? They will obviously raise taxes, maybe cut programs, things like public safety and other priorities. And my colleague Tim Clauser covers the city of Spokane. He recently reported that Spokane is forecasting a $19 million to $26 million general fund gap in 2027. So they've got themselves in a bit of a pickle there. Quick final note I want to mention on we weren't the worst state at all. And you can check out the Reason Foundation page if you want to do a deep dive on the report. I think it's like 155 pages if you're one of those data dive people that want to really get into the numbers. New Jersey was the worst. They had, 6 red flags, including deeply negative unrestricted net position and extremely low cash reserves. Connecticut was the second worst with 4 red flags, and they had the highest per capita debt burden. And then this probably won't surprise you. I'll name a few of the other states that had a lot of red flags. California, Illinois, Hawaii, Massachusetts, and North Dakota. Um, by contrast, 23 states, nearly half of all the states, had zero red flags and are in, very healthy financial situations. We are not among those states, unfortunately, in the black. So that's a wrap on today's episode of Washington in Focus Daily for your Thursday, August 27th. Another beautiful day. Hopefully, you can get outside and enjoy it. As always, thank you so much for watching and for subscribing to our podcast. Appreciate that so much and hope to see you again on Friday.